As it's often claimed, he says he finished at the top of his class at Wharton. But remember, Bob Corker has seen things most people haven't. He's had access to sensitive foreign policy intelligence, the kind the public never hears about, and even he has expressed deeply alarming concerns about the president. In an interview with the New York Times, Corker warned that Trump's reckless behavior on Twitter could actually push the world closer to World War III. At first, everything in the studio felt normal. The band played, the crowd applauded, the lights were bright, and the atmosphere carried that familiar late-night ease. Then Stephen Colbert walked to his desk, looked straight into the camera, and shifted the tone. He said, "There are two kinds of intelligence in politics. One that solves problems, and another that loudly insists it's brilliant while everything around it falls apart. I'm a very stable genius," Trump once said. The audience laughed, but Colbert didn't linger in the joke. He explained that the night's story was about a man who constantly promotes himself as the smartest person in every room, someone who claims top grades, a high IQ, unmatched instincts, and calls himself a genius surrounded by incompetence. Then Colbert paused and added, "And somehow, this same genius manages to turn every crisis into something even worse." Trump continued insisting that the war had already been won, claiming that only the fake news, especially the New York Times, was pretending otherwise. That was the moment when the audience started leaning in more closely. Colbert pointed out that Trump seems to love one narrative above all others, the one where he is secretly the most intelligent man in America, while everyone else is either too corrupt, too blind, or too unintelligent to recognize his brilliance. Colbert then played a series of clips showing Trump repeatedly praising his own intelligence, his grades, his instincts, his decision-making, presenting himself as unmatched in every way, yet without offering real proof. The crowd was already laughing when Colbert joked, "If confidence alone earned degrees, he'd own Harvard." Then, in a quieter tone, he added, "Unfortunately, reality still keeps score." That's when Colbert shifted gears and brought up something more grounded. No theatrics, no shouting, just a sharp breakdown. He referenced an account from a Trump Organization executive who explained that dealing with Trump often meant either convincing him that your idea was actually his, or simply ignoring his instructions and hoping he'd forget them the next day. Colbert compared it to a lack of object permanence, mocking the inconsistency by joking about forgotten policies like NAFTA. Colbert said, "If you really want to judge whether someone is a genius, you shouldn't listen to what they say about themselves. You should look at the results. Look at the outcomes, the chaos," the repeated pattern. Then he began laying it out piece by piece. A man who calls himself a master strategist, yet turns every situation into a spectacle. Someone who claims to be saving the country while leaving behind confusion, outrage, and constant exhaustion. Then came another sharp jab. Colbert joked about IQ scores, saying Rex Tillerson landed around 120 above average. Respectable, but not extraordinary. As for Trump, Colbert mocked the idea entirely, presenting a childish drawing instead, highlighting the gap between the image being sold and the reality being observed. He continued by describing a leader who craves the image of authority, even as crowds gather in protest, rejecting that very idea. According to Colbert, the real issue isn't just the behavior. It's the attempt to blur the line between confidence and intelligence, between loudness and leadership, between cruelty and strength. He pointed out a pattern. Whenever Trump is challenged or cornered, he doesn't respond with clarity. He escalates. He raises his voice, throws insults, labels others as weak, stupid, fake, or low IQ. Anything to avoid doing what genuinely intelligent people tend to do when faced with facts. Address them directly. By now, the room was roaring with laughter. Colbert said the country has spent years being asked to accept the idea that the very person creating the chaos is somehow the only one capable of fixing it. That's not genius, he remarked. That's the longest-running infomercial ever. He then leaned into the satire even more. Trump, he said, is portrayed as a brilliant chess master, yet somehow always ends up flipping the board, blaming everyone else, and still declaring victory. A supposed top-of-the-class legend whose supporters insist that every failure is actually part of some complex, hidden strategy. A man presented as unstoppable intellect, yet often sounding like he's losing track of his own sentences mid-speech. The laughter kept building, but then Colbert's tone sharpened. He said, "This is what happens when politics rewards performance over substance. A person can repeatedly call himself a genius while making reckless decisions that affect real lives and still receive applause, simply because the image is strong." He pointed out the real-world consequences: families grieving, communities living in fear, allies distancing themselves, tensions rising, while at the same time, Trump continues to push the narrative of his own brilliance as if it's something sacred. Colbert added that people who are truly stable usually don't feel the need to constantly announce it. Then came the closing thought. Colbert said that if a leader keeps shouting about being the smartest in the room while everything around him is falling apart, the issue isn't the critics, it's the leader himself. He emphasized that public protests rejecting that kind of leadership cut straight through the illusion. People are exhausted from being told that ego equals strength, that failure equals success, and that obvious mistakes are somehow strategic brilliance. In the end, Colbert said Trump doesn't fear criticism as much as he fears being clearly understood, because once people see through the act, it loses its power. The larger-than-life image shrinks, revealing what's underneath: insecurity dressed up as authority. He closed by saying that Trump may claim he was at the top of his class, but the record tells a different story. When faced with truth, he doesn't engage with it, he attacks it. When pressure builds, he doesn't lead, he performs. And when real wisdom is needed, what he offers instead is something closer to a tantrum. The crowd erupted one last time as Colbert leaned back and delivered the final line. "You can call yourself the best all you want, but if the entire country keeps failing under your leadership, maybe you weren't the valedictorian after all. Maybe you were just the loudest voice in the hallway."